Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Women Like Me Stories in Business. I'm your host, Julie Fairhurst, and I am so excited to have this lady with us here today. If you have a small business or you are in business at all, really, you may want to really dive into this podcast because there's going to be lots of helpful tips for you. Okay, so let me introduce Jenn Wint. She's the founder of Wint Communications and has made it her mission to help small businesses tell stories that stick, that breathe the spark of connection. And with October being Small Business Month, there's no better way to explore how narratives shape brands, how vulnerability becomes strength, and how every entrepreneur carries a story worth hearing. So you guys hang in. This is going to be amazing. Thank you, Jenn, so much for being willing to be on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to chat. And you're right, it is
Perfect.
Small Business Month, so this is perfect.
Yes, yes. Okay, so what first drew you into PR, storytelling, and how did Wint Communications come to be? That might be a lot. I don't know.
Big question. It's funny because I have, well, I mean, if you want to go way back, I have a degree in sociology and English. So I've always been really interested in language and in human behavior. So I think that was kind of the root of it. But I always sort of saw myself going down like more of a marketing path. But I was working I started my career in real estate development and architecture. And I had a mentor in in my very early jobs who managed the PR for a real estate company that I was working for. And I just loved the way that she could take you know, a house listing and turn it into a story. And sometimes that was about, the person selling it. Sometimes that was about the neighborhood. And those were the stories that really interested me about like, sure, this is a house, but like, you're not just buying a house, you're buying a lifestyle, you're buying an experience, you're buying the coffee shops and all that the neighborhood had to offer. So that just kind of led me very early into PR. I've been doing it for almost 20 years now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when did you start your communications company?
So I left kind of the traditional corporate world about 13 years ago. So it's been quite a while that I've been out on my own. And then I was doing still a lot of kind of larger businesses, corporate contracts, big events, things like that. And then just in the last like sort of 5 years, I've really been drawn into small businesses, working with founders, working with entrepreneurs. I work with some authors, like just kind of smaller independent businesses that
Hmm.
don't have the need and don't have the budget for like a full PR campaign, right? Like they don't
Right.
they don't need the full press release launch, like all these things, but they have these really rich stories and they have this desire for visibility and the need to connect with their audience. So I'd say
Yes.
it's been about 3 years that I've really been focused on small businesses.
Perfect. And so can you define story for business?
Yeah. So I always say sort of like your PR and your story is your why. And PR is earned. Um, it's earned and owned, really. Like it's your website, your blog, your social for sure, but it's also earned. Like when I spoke to you about being on this podcast, you kind of said, "Great, Jenn, I'd love to chat with you." So I sort of earned that opportunity. Like this isn't an ad where you're saying, book now with Wint Communications. That's sort of like more marketing advertising, whereas
Hmm.
PR is more earned. And to earn something, you need trust and you need sort of that why behind it. Because
Hmm.
if I said to you, like, I'd love to put an ad on your website, here's a few $100s, it's a different transaction than like I would like to have a conversation with you that talks about my business and why I do what I do. And I think you're going to be a little more careful when like if this interview goes really badly, you're not going to post it, right?
Right.
Hopefully it won't. I don't think it will, but yeah, it's sort of that connection piece, and stories
Yeah.
connect us, right? Like you
Yeah.
want to buy from businesses, buy products and services from stories and people that you connect with.
Yes, for sure. Absolutely. They have to know you, like you, and trust you. And that's
Yeah,
a difficult thing to do over a computer screen.
totally. Yeah,
Yeah.
it really
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, for sure. So what about, so how do you put story and identity together? I know that definitely the why is important, but how do you
Mhm.
help a business uncover or rediscover their narrative?
Yeah. So when kick off with a client, we have this like kind of generally goes around 2 hours, really big discussion about sort of what led you to do what you do.
Hmm.
Why do you do what you do? And I ask often, like, what problem are you solving? Because everybody gets into what they do and what they love to do because they wanted to help someone. Most
Yes.
people I work with wanted to, it's never I wanted to make money. It's always I wanted to help or I wanted to solve. So we kind of we look at that and then we go through like what are the really unique stories, what makes your business really different. Because I also tell clients all the time, nobody wants a perfect story, right? That's not interesting. I started my
Right.
business, I planned it all out, it went really well, I made lots of money, and here I am. No one's going to connect with that. That's not a
No.
real, you know what I mean? So when it comes to identity, it's sort of pulling out like what makes you really unique. And then as
Hmm.
well, who's your audience, right? Like if you're trying to connect with people who love gardening, you're going to want to use that part of your story if that's your audience. You
Hmm.
also all small businesses have that kind of business story as well as that origin story, and then as well that story that's going to really connect with their audience.
Yeah, absolutely. I was a real estate agent, so we have a little
Ah,
connection there for
yeah.
36 years. I just retired a couple years back to do Women Like Me full time.
Mhm.
And I would tell my because I had a team, and I would say, you guys, you can't market to a first-time buyer with an advertisement for a senior couple or a couple, every buyer is or client is unique. And so if you're not speaking to them, you can't just speak to everybody. You in once you
Mhm.
have to figure out who that is and then speak to them directly. You can always, market to whoever you want, but if you just do one ad that's sort of generic, you might miss everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's about that connection, right? And that,
Yes.
that piece of what bit, is it a school zone that may have no interest to some groups, but it'd be a major factor for other people. So
Yes. Yeah.
yeah,
Or it may be
understanding.
a real turnoff for some people.
Yeah,
They don't
definitely.
want to live near a school. They've
Yeah,
been there, done that.
totally.
Yeah, yeah. Oh dear. Okay. So, evolution of stories. So, how do you see a founder's story or brand narrative changing over time, maybe from startup to growth?
Yeah, definitely. And I think the founders that, I was having this conversation with someone the other day. We were saying, how rich do you have to be before you forget what it's like to not be rich? And I think
Mm,
that the founders that really remember where they've come from and
yeah.
the work that it took to get there, I think the ones that remember that part of their story have the richest stories. And I
Yeah.
mean rich in content.
Yes.
Um, but yeah, I think, and I also think that people want to be inspired by your story as well. So if you started as a solopreneur, launched your business, and now you're leading a team of 25 people, that's really inspiring for someone who's still at that, in that early growth phase.
Right.
And I think the founders that share vulnerably how they got there, and most of the good stories that I hear are about building those teams. They're
Yeah.
about saying, like, recognizing what you don't know and finding those experts and relying on them and getting as much information from the people around you that you can. Those are kind of the interesting stories. And then,
Yes.
of course, the bumps along the road as
Yeah.
well. Like those stories relatable, right? Because we've all had those bumps.
Yeah. Let me ask you. So let's say I was starting in real estate and I
Mhm.
came to you and you said, "Well, why are you doing it?" And I said, because a lot of them say this, "Well, I want to make a lot of money." How are you going to help me gather my story when I'm saying, "Well, I entered real estate because I wanted to make a lot of money." So what are you going to do? Because obviously we can't, nobody's going to go, you know, yeah, we'll work with Julie because she wants to make a lot of money. But so how do you help me to shape a real story?
Yeah, and I worked with a couple of realtors, and I really like working with realtors because what I like about them is They are, I mean, a lot of them do work in teams for sure,
Yeah.
but there are a lot of realtors to choose from. Whether you're picking,
Yeah.
anywhere in Canada, whatever, there's a lot of realtors to pick from. It's a very crowded space. There's a
Yes.
lot of, what do you say, a lot of fish in the pond or whatever that
Yes.
saying. And so I
Yeah.
say to them, like, sure, you want to make a lot of money, and that's great. We all need to make money to make our businesses successful. That, I think, is a really important part of a conversation when it comes to the why. But what I find with that point is it's not the differentiator, right? Because if you took 20 realtors, they were all in the kind of area that you were looking to, to purchase a home in, and you said to all of them, okay, who here wants to make money? You're going to get 20 hands up, right?
Of course.
But then, so you need to dig and find, like, what's that unique story? And I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting to make money from your career. Like I said, that's
No,
why
of
people do what
course.
you do. But
Yes.
what is your point of difference? Did you move a lot when you were a child? I was talking to this mortgage broker that I was working with, actually, and about 90 minutes into our conversation, and she was so passionate about helping people invest in property. And about 90 minutes into our discovery call, she told me a story about how the first apartment that she had ever purchased had burnt down, and
Oh,
the lessons she had learned from that. And I'm like, light bulb moment, why? And I said, do you talk to clients about this? And she said, no, I've never talked to clients about this. I said, this is such an interesting story, because that's a really personal, painful thing to go through, that has really
yeah.
informed the way that you approach the work that you're doing, that
Yes.
that a lot of people don't have. And I'm not saying it makes her better, but it makes her,
No.
there's points of connection there.
Well,
So
and yeah, and makes her stand out as being a little bit possibly different.
absolutely, yeah. So I would work with a realtor, and I always say more about that, tell me more about that, until
Yeah.
we get to something that is unique. And
Yeah.
then I think the next challenge for a realtor is, once you've kind of figured out what your unique points are and why somebody might want to work with you, how do we then communicate that?
Hmm.
And for realtors, a lot of it is their social media, their website. And then how can we take your story and some of the work that you're doing and get some of that earned media? What
Hmm.
other blogs can we have you talked about on, or guest blogging, or
Yes.
podcasts, or mainstream media? How do we kind of position you as a thought leader in this very busy space?
Yes. Yes. That's brilliant. Yes. Very good. Very good. Okay. So with October being Small Business Month,
Mhm.
how can we shine a spotlight on our business? And how can we use, like, what, I guess we move in just from what you were just saying. So how can we leverage the storytelling?
Mhm. Yeah, and that is it's a tough question, because again, there's a lot of stories out there. There's a lot of small businesses out there, and we can pitch, figure out your story, figure out where your audience is, pitch your story to media, absolutely. And a lot of the time that, I'm seeing clients with small businesses who are seeing a lot of success in the media space because of a well-crafted pitch, and because of their persistence, and because they're really doing their research and nailing the people that they're talking to. But the other
Hmm.
place that I'm seeing a lot of success for small businesses is through collaborations. And maybe to go back to the real estate example, if you're kind of a realtor who's like, I just don't think I'm going to be the spokesperson on global TV, or I just don't think I'm going to be the spokesperson in a national newspaper, can you find a local mortgage broker? Can you find a local property assessment person, or company? And how can you, because these days we all have a platform, so
Yes.
how can you use the platform of others to access the audience that you want to access, get those nice backlinks, if they're linking to you from their website, that kind of thing, but also have someone else sort of tell your story. And does that look
Hmm.
like an Instagram live? Does that look like a blog swap? Does that look like a conversation like you and I are having? Like, how
Hmm.
can you use the success of others to not only, make things easier for your audience, because they're going, oh, geez, there's a mortgage broker, a property assessor, and a realtor, and maybe an interior designer all in one place. If I like all of them, that's a one-stop shop,
Yes.
as well as have some different platforms to tell your story, to access a very values aligned audience.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think that a lot of people get kind of stuck there. And I think that it's
Mm.
it's not just necessarily don't want to be the spokesperson, but they don't know what to do.
Yeah.
They don't just don't they don't know what to do. And really from my own experience and being in an industry for such a long time, and not just that industry, but anywhere where we have to personally promote ourselves, like that's hard. Like
Yeah.
I remember when I had my first picture on a bus bench, I'm not even joking, I couldn't drive down that street and look at it. I
Yeah.
just couldn't drive. I couldn't do it. Couldn't do it. I knew
And
I had to have it, but I couldn't do it. And so, how, maybe as women, well, I mean, how do we overcome that in business?
well, that's
Because
a
we're
great
we're
point.
not being seen, right? We're kind of hiding. So how can we overcome that?
Yeah, and that's a great point. Men don't have this problem.
No, they don't.
They're driving by the bus stop even when it's not anywhere near where they need to go.
Yeah.
They're sitting on it.
Yeah, exactly,
um,
exactly.
yeah, and I have this challenge with, female clients where they've got a great business, they've got a great story, they've done the work, they've sent the pitch, they've
Mhm.
got the interview, and now the interview's published, and I say, oh, I saw your interview was published. How come you haven't shared that in your newsletter on your LinkedIn? They're like, oh, I'm feeling a bit nervous. And it's like, but you worked so hard to get that.
Yeah,
And I always say to them, go back to the why. Like you don't have to say like, oh, look at me, I'm on a bus. Like you can say, I purchased or I'm really excited to be on this bus to help young families access my services because I'm the expert for young families. I know
yeah,
school zones like the back of my hand, and this
yeah,
bus stop is going to help me help families find the best home. I
yes,
think it
yeah,
just goes back to that, why are you doing what you're doing? And
yeah,
and people can't help you, they can't work with you, they can't promote you if they don't know about you.
that's
So
right.
you're doing
Yeah,
in a way, a disservice to your community and your audience and your potential customers if you're keeping
yes.
what you're doing really quiet.
Yeah, we used to call it the secret agent.
Hmm.
Yeah, don't be a secret agent.
Yeah,
You're not supposed to be a secret agent to get ahead. Um,
exactly.
yeah. So, local versus broad stories. So, how do you balance deeply local, so like the neighborhood community stories, or the reaching or getting them to reach that wider audience, or even should they be reaching that wider audience?
Yeah, I think it just goes back to like, what is your, if you have a product, for example, that you can be purchased online and you can ship it out anywhere, your reach is a bit broader than, again, a realtor who is
Right.
selling in a specific neighborhood. So I think it's sort of like, what are you, who are you looking to tap into, to connect with, and to access? And also it shifts your story a little bit, right? Because there's a huge desire in Canada right now to shop Canadian, to buy local.
Yes.
There's a lot going on with obviously all the tariffs and all these things. So I think using that messaging is really important. So if you're marketing yourself in, let's say, Vancouver or the Lower Mainland or BC, that's the messaging you want to use. But if you are pitching like a national gift guide, you'd like to say you're a Canadian product as opposed to
Yes.
being a product from British Columbia. So
Yes.
it's just sort of tweaking that narrative to fit the audience.
Yes. It just, you keep going back to the audience, the audience. So it, you can do all the marketing and all the grunt work getting it together. But if you don't know your audience inside and out like the back of your hand, you're just throwing stuff at the wall and hoping it sticks.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And when people say, well, I'm not sure exactly who my audience is, I say, when you talk about your business, what are the questions that people are asking? Who's asking more questions, and who's going, oh, okay, that's cool. And finding someone else to chat with. You can really
Mhm.
learn a lot just from answering questions and asking your own questions.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's so important though to figure that out.
definitely.
So can you share a time when, just to give our audience a little bit of an idea, what happens if you share a pitch that doesn't land?
I have a lot of experience with that. You have to have a bit of tough skin to be in public relations because like you send a lot of pitches that don't land. And a lot of that just looks like radio silence. And I think the way that I manage that is I completely deeply understand that these journalists have very busy inboxes. They also have the mandate coming from their, their production team and whatnot. So if I send a pitch, and generally, and I say this to a lot of my clients, almost all the time, your first pitch is not going to be the one that lands,
Mm-hmm.
because we all do it. You read the email, the journalist is reading the email. They say, oh yeah, that's a good story. I like the sound of that. And then it, goes somewhere else. So what I focus a lot on with a lot of my PR coaching clients is the follow-up, because the follow-up is, where you can have an impact for sure. And so in that, I'm curious if you had a chance to read my email, wanted to follow up and not remind you that it's Small Business Month, but say, October Small Business Month. Did you get a chance to think about the pitch I had sent? That kind of thing. That's
Yeah.
where you're going to get your traction. And
Yes.
sometimes it's not the right fit, which is why we send lots of pitches.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and that's the thing is that don't be afraid of a no because as
Mhm.
cliche as it sounds, every no is closer to a yes, and it is true.
Absolutely.
It
Yeah.
is true.
Yeah. And in my industry, you get a lot of no's and you get a lot of like nothing, no
Yep.
responses. And
Yeah.
that's just it's just how it goes.
Yes.
And you get better at figuring out how to get less no's, but there's always going to be no's, or not right now, or maybe later, or sometimes I
Yes.
get emails back saying this is such a great story, but it's not the right fit, you
Right.
know?
Yes.
So,
Yeah, exactly.
mhm.
So how do you measure whether a story worked? So if I put my business story out there into the world, how would I be figuring that it works? What might I be seeing happening or yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely a challenge in the public relations industry, because when you put an ad out, you'll get metrics, you'll get ROI. If you do a social media ad, you know how many people clicked on it, you know what province they're in, if they drank
Yes.
water after they clicked. Like you get a lot of information about these people.
You do.
Whereas when the currency that you're working with is trust, it's a lot harder to
Mhm.
measure. So I think there's a statistic which I believe it was somebody had to see something 7 times and then it was 11 times. And I actually did a workshop this past weekend and someone said, I think it's 16 times now that
Oh,
someone has to see something before they take action or before that message has any impact.
yeah.
So it is the kind of PR coverage that I'm helping clients get is part of a bigger puzzle.
Yeah.
And it is just one factor. And it's people, I have some people that say, I need to have the ROI. And I say, well, maybe marketing and advertising is a better fit for your business right now. Like pursuing storytelling isn't for everyone. Do you know what I mean?
Right. Yes.
And like
Yes.
we can use this podcast as a great example. Like we're having a
Mhm.
great conversation. We're going to
Yeah.
post it. We're going to share it. People will watch it. People will enjoy it. But like, I wouldn't expect that either one of us would get a phone call and say like, I'd like to work with you because I listened to this. You know what I mean?
Right.
They'll
Well,
listen to,
so true. So true. And I know that because two of my boys are still in real estate. They took over the business, and I always tell them it's they're going to see you they need to see you over here, and then they need to see you over there, and then they need to get this from you in the mail, and then they need to see that over there. And so yeah, you're right.
yeah.
I've never looked into how many times they need to see you, but I would say especially with our social media, probably 16's getting there.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And like I said, when trust is the currency, it's
Yeah.
really hard to measure.
Yeah.
And so I think like I would never encourage anyone to put all their eggs in the PR basket. I think you need to
Yeah.
be using other communication methods
Yes.
and other marketing tools. And this is one of them.
Yeah. What about trends? Do you know what's going on out there in the world of whatever it would be for just for thinking more for what we need to do to enhance our businesses or get more reach? What are the trends out there right now?
Yeah, so there's two kind of buckets. There's industry trends, and I've recently been playing a lot with Google Trends, which is so
Oh,
interesting. You stick your search terms in to see what people are actually searching. So there's sort of
yes.
what is
Mm.
trending, and then there's your market trends. And I think I've got that right. And like your market trends might be that, well, a great trend over like one that's very prominent right now is people are shopping local. So you'll
Yes.
see a lot of products that have actually been made in Canada for 50 years are now putting a Canadian flag or a maple leaf on their product. So that's kind of a market trend that people are now telling that local story, where before
Mm,
that wasn't so important. Um, Whereas like something that is trending right now might be, Taylor Swift, Life of a Showgirl. And like,
right.
so like I'm wearing an orange sweater and she's her new album is all about orange. So maybe I'm trying to, if I'm, this is probably, it's not even the right shade of orange. So that's not a great example, but
I understand what you mean, though.
you can tap into
Yeah.
those sort of trends. And then another thing that I always encourage clients to have a look into is these like, I don't even know like what the term would be, like these national days. Like I pitched a story once that was
Oh.
about National Sibling Day because I was
Oh.
working with a female entrepreneur who had a sister who also had a successful business. And I had spoken to the sister and I thought, you two have such a cool dynamic, the way that you support one another in your businesses. I pitched a publication. I said, I don't know if you're aware, but in 3 weeks it's National Sibling Day. Did you want to do a profile on these two women? And I said, yeah, that's a great idea. So I think today is actually, I think it's Celebrate Your Local Bookshop Day from
Oh.
memory.
Oh.
So tapping into those kind of like mini trends
Yeah.
is really important. And I'm, where appropriate, I'm always a big fan of jumping on things that are trending, because you can insert yourself into a
Absolutely.
conversation that's already happening,
Yes.
but as
Yes.
well to be aware of those larger market trends.
Yes.
Are people wanting more online events? Like, are people looking to shop locally? And these are things that
Hmm.
evolve slower and over
Yes.
time. But definitely, like the first thing I say to people when they say, "Oh, how do I like start pursuing PR?" And I say, you have to consume media. If you want to be in a local paper, you should read the local paper. You know.
Yes. Yes.
So, kind of just
Yes.
doing that education piece is
Yes.
really important.
That is such great advice. Absolutely. Yeah, so often because we're in a society now of like this minute, that minute,
Mm,
and we're not necessarily doing the research that possibly we should be doing.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
for sure. Yeah. What advice would you give to newbies? So they've got zero PR budget, but they need to do something. What are some steps that you could advice that you could give them?
Yeah, and when people come to me and they say, like, I want to pursue some PR, I say, do you have a call to action? Because before you pursue, storytelling, visibility, and getting yourself out there, you have to know what you want from your audience. And
Mhm.
so, sometimes people say, like, well, I'm thinking about writing a book, so I want to do some PR. And I say, well, what is your call to action? Because you don't have a book to sell, it's not ready yet.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
that doesn't mean you can't do PR. I mean, maybe
Yeah.
I would recommend working on the book a little bit first, but like, do you have a newsletter that you want people to join? Are you trying to get people interested? Is your book about, I don't know, trying to think of something coming up. Is your book about I don't know,
Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving? Sure. So do you want to start this conversation about this thing that you're going to be exposing or writing about or something like that? Like, what is the call to action? And until
Mhm.
you have one that's strong and clear, then maybe there's a couple steps to do before you start your PR. But once you've got your call to action, and whether that is, I'm trying to grow my newsletter, I want to tell my story. I want to, I'm a executive coach who wants clients. Like, my call to action is literally book a session with me. Or my call to action is, buy my product, buy my scrunchie or buy my skincare line. Figure out what your call to action is, and then start telling your story. It's
Yeah.
it's kind of as simple as that.
Yes.
But before you go out with a bunch of messaging, figure out what you want. What action do you want your audience to take when they hear your story?
That's fabulous advice. Very, very good advice. So if a business could be remembered for one story, even 10 years from now, what kind of story would you think that would be?
I think it goes back to that why, like that they've created something to solve a problem or help help a person or help a business.
Yes.
And that's, that's what they're doing. Like if you think about all the interesting, even like Netflix, for example,
Mhm.
started as, I think, mail out DVDs. And then they thought, people don't want to wait at their mailbox anymore. How do we go to the next phase? And then, online streaming is now basically how many of us, most of
Yeah.
us, consume our
Yeah.
media.
Yeah.
And I think, like, using Netflix as an example, they really revolutionized their industry through
Hmm.
kind of taking a big leap and taking a chance and being a really small kind of startup.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'd love to think of a local example that I can use. But I
Well,
think,
no, sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say it goes back to that problem solving. What
Yeah.
problem are you solving for clients, and how are you kind of
Yes.
staying one step ahead of what people are wanting?
Yeah. I was just going to say one thing about the Netflix is
Mm,
that I've recently learned, I've been in doing some stuff, but anyway, I've recently learned that, and I didn't realize this, but it makes complete sense. So I spoke to a producer, and she had a number one. She did a movie. She lives in Australia, and so she did this movie in Australia. It went over very, very well. It was shown in Australia, but it was also shown in a couple of other countries, which didn't end up being in Canada or the US. And I thought, how interesting, because Netflix is like, I thought to myself, well, that's interesting because I can't even find it on my Netflix. And I
mm,
thought they know who they're marketing to.
mm-hmm.
That story is going to work really well in Australia, and I think Israel. I can't remember what other country she said it was. She was shocked that it was in these other countries. But why didn't they play it in Canada? Why didn't they put it in the US? It wouldn't have, for whatever reason, they decided that we're not typically the audience for that movie that she produced.
Interesting.
But it was for there. And I thought, oh yeah, like, there's, imagine the stuff we're not even seeing.
Mm-hmm. And they would
Right?
have, I suppose, all of the analytics, right? Like they would
Oh,
have, Australians love a good murder mystery, or they love, this, and
yes.
Canadians are more skewed to this. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's very interesting.
Yeah, and it really does go back, though, to what you were saying in the very beginning of our
Mhm.
conversation, which is you have to know who your audience is.
Yeah,
You just
yeah,
can't craft a marketing plan. You can't really craft, of course, your business story without really knowing who you're going to be talking to.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and unfortunately for small businesses, we don't have access to all the data that Netflix would have. So we're
No.
kind of out going to a networking event, or, showing
Yes.
up at an online networking event, and listening and asking questions. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
we don't.
Yeah. It's just so interesting. It's just, it's been a fascinating conversation. And, one of the things I love so much, I know I've said this before with certain guests, but is when I get so much out of it. So I have been writing notes. I have all sorts of notes that I can take back and help to my community that I work with. So, Jen, it was great. You're definitely a wealth of knowledge, and I appreciate you sharing. Is there anything at all that you would like to share with our audience before we close? Any words of wisdom or calls to action, or, oh, just so everybody knows, we're going to have all of Jen's information and links to how you can find her in the show details of the podcast, the YouTube video. So you will be able to connect with her, but you can still give a call to action if you want to.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I could go on and on. I love these conversations, and I love, so many of these conversations happen behind closed doors. And so I love the fact that you're making them accessible and making them available to other business owners. I think that is just
Yeah.
so important. I think my call to action, I mean, like you said, you'll share all the links. I have like a little five tips to grow your business, five
Oh,
PR tips, which I'll share the link to. I would love it
perfect.
if some of your audience downloaded that. I would love to connect on social, and I also have a button on my website where you can book a call. It's a 20-minute call if you want to just chat and even find out if your business is in a good place for PR. I
Mm,
love having those conversations. But I think my call to action, if you wanted to, like, get started right now in the next 5 minutes, is like do your research and think about where your story could be told. And one of the tips I give is like Google your headline. Think about if you could write the story and have it printed in, in the Globe and Mail or whatever, Maclean's Magazine, BC Business, what's your
Yeah,
ideal publication and what's your ideal headline? And without putting your name in the headline, obviously, but
of course.
Google that headline and see who's having that conversation already, what publication is telling that story, and then look into those places where the conversations are happening, and how is your story different to that one that's
Mhm.
being told.
Yeah. And I think just building on that a little bit is so many people think, oh, well, everybody's doing it. Well,
Mm,
everybody might be doing it, but you're going to do it different. Or
yep.
everybody might have a similar story, but you're going to tell it different. You have
And there's
different
enough
emotions,
business.
all of that.
Yeah, and there's enough business out there for all of us. Like, to go
Yes.
back to the real estate example, it would be an absolute disaster if everyone in your community wanted to work with you. That would be very stressful. So that's
Oh,
why we
yeah.
have different people that will connect with different audiences and be able to help
Yes.
different people. And if you
Yes.
communicate your story clearly and effectively and authentically, your audience will find you, and you'll find them. And there's going to be lots of people that aren't the right audience, and that's totally fine.
Yeah.
That's great, actually.
Yes. Yes.
So yeah, going out there to figure out where are the platforms that could tell your story, and whose trust do you want, who is your audience, and where are they consuming their
Yeah.
media.
Wow. I got it. This podcast has kicked me in the rear. You've got me thinking a totally different direction. And I appreciate that because sometimes we need to wake up a little bit. Sometimes we get complacent in what we're doing, right? Oh, this is comfortable or this is easy because I already know it. But all of a sudden you talk to somebody who knows what they're doing, like you, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, yeah, I got a few extra things I can take. I will be starting. I have notes, people. I have notes. So
Oh, good. I'm
yeah,
so glad. No,
yeah.
I think the way that you're sharing your story and other stories is wonderful. So
Oh,
thank
well,
you so much for the conversation. I really enjoyed it.
oh, thank you, Jen. Well, everybody, we're going to sign off. So, as I said, all of Jen's information is going to be in the show notes. Do not hesitate to reach out to her. She's lovely and extremely helpful. And hopefully, we will see you on our next Women Like Me Stories in Business. Take care, everybody. Bye.